I need the scoop.
A wedding day turns into a nightmare when a husband can't hide his jealousy over his ex-crush's new boyfriend. I'm diving into a Reddit story that reveals how one man's obsession with the past shattered his marriage in just days. Prepare for a shocking tale of betrayal, deception, and the courage it takes to walk away when red flags become too glaring to ignore.
I, a 25-year-old woman, got married to my husband, who is 24, a week ago after dating for 2.5 years. We'll call him Jim. Jim has a friend called Misha, a 22-year-old woman who was invited to the wedding. He and Misha have known each other since high school and were close friends. Misha had a very obvious crush on Jim from what he and others who know them have told me. Jim told me this after I met Misha for the first time and confessed that he leaned into her crush and led her on throughout their high school years and for a little while after, before we got together. He did this because he was struggling with his mental health and he really liked her attention. He seemed genuinely guilty about all of that because he thought Misha was a nice girl and a good friend. Because he showed guilt, I didn't feel the need to bring it up or argue about it, despite thinking it was a really thing to do. Plus, Misha is a nice girl who has never overstepped boundaries and has been nothing but kind and friendly towards me, and I now consider her a friend too. Misha moved away to the city last year and has done really well for herself. She has a long-term boyfriend who none of us had met yet, so when it came to sending wedding invites, I told her she was welcome to bring him as her +1. The first red flag came when Jim was weirdly resistant to the idea of Misha bringing her boyfriend, but he excused it by being concerned about the number of guests we invited, and the matter was dropped. When the wedding day came, Misha showed up in this beautiful dress, nothing inappropriate for a wedding, and with her boyfriend on her arm, who I'll admit is a very handsome guy. Think a Kit Harington type. She's also lost weight and has a haircut that suits her better, and I thought she looked great. We also found out throughout the night that her boyfriend is very successful and earns more than practically anyone else who attended. Throughout the reception, I noticed Jim glaring at Misha and her boyfriend the whole time, and he was really cold and short towards her when she came over to congratulate us and give us a gift. He was also straight up kind of rude to her boyfriend when Misha introduced us to him. When his mom, who's always known and liked Misha, mentioned that she was glad Misha found a great guy and praised her boyfriend for being so nice, Jim snapped that at least she won't be desperate and hung up on me for the rest of her life, which I thought was cruel and uncalled for. I didn't challenge him because I didn't want to argue at my wedding, despite the fact that he frankly sounded bitter. The whole thing has left an awful taste in my mouth, and I can't help but think that Jim got jealous that Misha has found a guy who's honestly quite a catch, who she's clearly very in love with, and is now completely over Jim. It felt a lot like watching a kid get upset at another kid for playing with a toy they personally never wanted to play with in the first place. Jim has definitely always been quite insecure, but I thought it was something he was really working on and making progress with. After getting some private messages from people, I decided to go through his phone while he was napping after work. And needless to say, this marriage is over. I'll sort everything out and figure out my next steps.
Viewers were overwhelmingly supportive of the original poster, urging her to investigate further before making any decisions. With growing suspicion, she decided to check her husband's phone while he napped after work. What she discovered in those private messages would confirm her worst fears and change everything in an instant.
Hey everyone, I'm posting this as an update to my previous situation. Pretty much the day after my original post, I got some private messages from people suggesting that I go through my husband Jim's phone to see if he and Misha were truly just friends before this, and that nothing romantic happened between them that would explain his reaction at the wedding. He always takes a 45-minute nap after work, so I used that as my opportunity to swipe his phone from where it was charging on his desk, so that I could look through it. I've seen him put in his passcode a ton of times, so that wasn't an issue. I didn't find anything in his texts with her, but I know that Jim goes on Instagram a lot, so I checked there too. The immediate red flag was that he'd used an app lock that required a passcode to access Instagram, but the dumbass used the same passcode that he uses to unlock his phone, so I got into that right away. It's his birth year, go figure. And what would you know? I go to his messages with Misha, and find messages from him the morning after our wedding, telling her how beautiful she'd looked that night, how much he'd missed her, how he felt that her boyfriend being there spoiled his opportunity to catch up with her, and that he was desperate to meet up with her. Misha never replied to these messages, and he sent some more to her later that day. I won't get into what he said because they were very personal insults that were frankly just gross. Just think about the kind of stuff you would read on those nice guys forums. Misha left him on read, and when I clicked on her account, it appears that she's blocked him. I scrolled through their messages quite far back, and I believe nothing romantic has happened between them. I wish that was all, but looking into his other conversations on Instagram, I found that he's been messaging other girls on there. They seemed like aspiring Instagram model types from our area. Most of these conversations were just him shooting his shot and getting left on red, but others had evolved into flirting, and 2 of them resulted in sexting. And the most embarrassing part of all, the nudes he was sending to these women weren't even of him. I know what his body looks like, and he doesn't have chiseled abs and isn't that well endowed. I think he must have found a man's profile on some adult website and used those pictures, just cropping the face out. These 2 conversations happened in the past 6 months. I ended up texting his mom and his brother from my phone asking them to come and pick him up from the apartment, and then I went to wake him up. I told him that I knew about the girls he was messaging on Instagram, that he needed to pack a bag and get the hell out before I started throwing his stuff out onto the street and causing a scene. He started crying and begging me not to kick him out, and swore that they were just messages and that he would never actually cheat on me, but I don't believe him for a second. Then he had the nerve to tell me that he didn't want me to tell anyone else about what he'd done, but I had left the room and started ignoring him by that point. He left with his mom and brother and is staying there from what I know. I've blocked him on everything for the time being until I'm ready to tell him that I'm seeking annulment. Thankfully, where I'm from, you can get one almost no questions asked, as long as you haven't been married for longer than 30 days, and I've already looked into the process. I haven't really left my apartment at all this week, and I've been calling in sick to work because I don't feel like I can face people. I'm just so embarrassed that I've wasted over 2 years on this man, and that I married him in the first place. I don't feel like I can even talk to people about this, so sharing my story has helped, and I'd like to thank you all for your kind words, advice, and support. I might reach out to Misha when the dust has settled, but I think I'll need to build up some courage for that.
The community rallied around the original poster, offering support during one of the most difficult periods of her life. 4 months passed as she worked through the legal process of ending her marriage and rebuilding her sense of self. Her final update reveals how both she and everyone involved have moved forward from this painful chapter.
Hello everyone. I just thought I'd give an update to my situation since I still get messages of support on here every week or so. You'll be glad to hear that I was able to get the annulment and I didn't have to go through a messy divorce with Jim. I struck an agreement with him that I wouldn't tell a soul about his cheating or what happened with Misha and would leave him alone forever if he agreed to the annulment and got it over quickly. I did end up sticking my end of the bargain, but it ended up not mattering because it turns out his brother is quite the gossip and let the cat out of the bag over Christmas after getting into an argument with Jim while drunk. A lot of Jim's family were pissed and asked for the money they contributed to his half of the wedding fund back, and some of our mutual friends have cut contact with him. A couple of our friends plastered everything on Facebook and humiliated him. It was interesting to watch the back and forth between them and Jim, honestly. I lived in our apartment and covered the rent on my own, while he lived at his parents' until the lease ended back in January, and I'm now living with my dad. I plan to stay here for a while and take things easy. In January, I also tried reaching out to Misha via text, asking if she'd like to meet up for coffee to talk about anything. I never got a response directly from her, but a few days later, I got a call from her number, and it was her boyfriend on the other end. He said they were both sorry for what had happened to me, and that they hope I'm doing well, but that Misha thought it was best to cease any contact, as this whole ordeal had made her anxiety and mental health problems spiral, and had landed her back in therapy. I did ask why she never told me that Jim had messaged her the day after the wedding, and her boyfriend confessed that he advised her not to get involved. His direct words were, "I'm sorry to sound rude, but it's not her circus. I'm a little disappointed that she doesn't want to talk to me, but I get where she's coming from, and I can't force her to do anything. To be honest, I think she's been looking for a way to distance herself from our hometown and the people she and Jim knew back in high school for a while now. As for me, I'm also in therapy as I want to sort through these feelings and get back to feeling good about myself again before I even think about entering the dating scene again. I've also been firm about ending friendships with anyone who's taken Jim's side, as I don't want him finding his way into my life again. So far, he's stayed away from me and hasn't tried to contact me, although his mom reached out over Christmas to ask me if there was any chance I might forgive Jim and take him back. In her opinion, you two are just meant to be together. I didn't respond to her, and I've blocked her on pretty much everything now too. Thank you again for all your kind words and support. I'm certain leaving that would have been harder for me had I not had hundreds of comments backing me up.
Sometimes the most painful endings lead to the most necessary new beginnings. If you've ever had to rebuild after betrayal, share your thoughts in the comments below. Subscribe to follow more stories of resilience and recovery, and check out our other videos about recognizing relationship red flags before they cost you everything.